Hello, everyone. My name is Jimmy Salyers, and I'm the Eastern Branch Chair of the Kentucky NASW, and I also serve as the Legislative and Advocacy Committee Chairman. We're here today to discuss the treatment of a substance use disorder inside of a pandemic, more specifically in Eastern Appalachia. Today, I have three individuals who serve in the Appalachian region who are considered experts in their field. And first and foremost, I would like to take the time to thank each and every one of you for being a participant in this panel discussion. I know that it's a Saturday morning, we're recording this, and I just want to say I appreciate you guys taking your time out of your day and your weekend in order to get this topic out there and talk about discussions and issues that truly affect Eastern Kentucky. I guess we'll begin with the introduction section. Like I said, my name is Jimmy Salyers. I'm the Eastern Branch Chair of the Kentucky NASW and the Legislative and Advocacy Committee Chairman. I am also a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counseling associate and a certified social worker in Eastern Kentucky. I work for a company called Kentucky Addiction Centers, in which I am the peer support lead and co-clinical lead of the facility. Kyle, I guess we'll start with you with the introductions. If you don't care, just tell us what your name is and where you work at and kind of what's got you started in the field.
Sure. Thanks, Jimmy. So my name is Kyle Gibson. I've worked in the substance use co-occurring field for a little under 7 years. I currently work in Ohio, right across the river from Eastern Kentucky, but I've served in Kentucky through the Community Mental Health Center pathways. I worked there for 4 years as a registered alcohol and drug peer support specialist. My current licensure in Kentucky, I'm an LSW in Kentucky, which I'm in the process of reciprocating that to Ohio. I'm a CDCA in Ohio, which is a chemical dependency counselor's assistant, and a case manager. So I have experience working in the field, plus I'm a person committed to long-term recovery and have been since February the 10th of 2015. So what got me started in this field is I was a Department of Corrections referral to a peer-led, peer-driven recovery model in Erlanger, Kentucky, a center called the Grateful Life Center. And they provided me with an opportunity there. Completed a 6-month program, 6 to 9 month program, and they provided me an opportunity to be a peer mentor, which provided me a $75 a week stipend, and they paid room and board for me. And that's where I got started in this field. Why I picked social work was because one of my heroes, Andy Thompson, kind of guided me towards social work. He was at LCSW before he passed in 2020. And so here we are talking about what I'm really passionate
about. Okay. Well, thank you, Kyle, for being on the call today. Chris, would you like to go next?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Christopher Branham. I am the program director here at Genesis Recovery Kentucky Center in Grayson, Kentucky. We're a residential treatment facility. We're also similar to kind of what Kyle was talking about. We're a peer-led, peer-driven social model recovery. I have just recently finished my Bachelor in Social Work through the Morehead State University this past December, and pursuing my master's at University of Kentucky now. And what got me started in this was my own struggles with substance use. I'm originally from Pike County, born and raised out there on the border of Pike County, Virginia, and I actually started stealing my own family's medications there at a very young age. So that went on for about 20 years, and I didn't know any other solution. And then eventually my addiction led to some charges, which granted me an opportunity to go off to a long-term treatment facility. And that is where I landed up at the Morehead Inspiration Center in Morehead. For at that time, Kyle said he got to do the 6 to 9. Well, we was doing a 9 to 12 then. So, but I still ended up doing 23 months through that facility, just because for the first time I found something that was working in my life. So I stayed there. Eventually it led to my work there, working with others, being around this environment, felt safe, and I saw people change their lives, and I really liked that. And I stayed in that for about 9 or 10 years and I still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And here I am, was at 40 some years old. And I'm like, well, people's like, well, you're doing social work stuff, you're networking, you've got all these connections, these resources that even my own family didn't know when I was coming up in this thing. So that eventually steered me to go to the social work, to pursue a career in the social work. And that's why we're here today.
Okay. Thank you, Chris, for being on the call today. Jeremy, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jeremy West. I am a licensed independent chemical dependency counselor from Ohio, and as well as a licensed social worker. I work with Kyle. We work in the same agency. I got into this field, very similar stories to these two gentlemen. I was paroled, had a 20 plus year addiction issue, and ended up paroling into a recovery Kentucky center. I was there about 8 months, and decided when I completed that I wanted to give back. Went back to school, got my bachelor's and my master's. So it's been very rewarding these last several years. So that's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for being on the call. All three of you mentioned a personal connection to the social work field, substance use recovery. I'm in the same boat. Obviously my story has been made publicized, multiple times before, between speeches in the 2020 Social Work Lobby Day, advocating on bills and legislation that are going through Frankfurt. Obviously, I testified against House Bill 1 in 2020 as well. I think the majority of social workers that get into the field and deal with substance use, we usually have a personal connection with the field. Either it's through our own experiences or through experiences of family members. And that personal connection kind of leads us towards trying to help other people recover from this situation. Now, obviously, the reason why we're here today is because the field of substance use treatment has shifted. We all know that we have this pandemic now called COVID. It's been going on now, I think this is year 3 of it now. So basically the topic of the day, we want to discuss how has COVID affected substance use treatment. We want to talk about some of the barriers that it's caused, some of the good things that have come from it, and then also try to focus on how have things adapted because of COVID. So first off, I would like to discuss the fact that we were already struggling treating the opioid epidemic. Obviously, it's been existing for multiple years now, going on decades in Eastern Kentucky and Eastern Appalachia. So how has the pandemic made things worse in your all's opinion?
I think the data strongly reflects, because I think it was 2017 was the first year in over a decade where they started to see a decline in overdose rates. And of course, those are exacerbated right now. Last year being the highest year ever recorded, 102,000 fatal overdoses. I have no clue how, I've tried to find it, how many reported overdoses, non-fatal, have happened last year, and I can't really find that information. Working in treatment, I think every day didn't know what to expect, especially early on during the epidemic. Like shifting gears, what are we going to do to protect our clients? What are we going to do to protect the staff? Lack of connection to the outside community, and community is huge as far as substantial long-term recovery goes, building those relationships. And I think there was a strong disconnect.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've seen here. I know someone said it because it's not my words, and I can sure, but it was impactful when they said, the disease of alcoholism and substance use disorder is a isolating disease, and now we're looking at a pandemic that is forcing us to isolate and to separate from the very thing that was bringing us, moving us forward, and that was the fellowship. And so that barrier of unsurety of being able to even have business, we had created in this community alone, when we first established here in 2016, there was only 2 active support groups for substance use, Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and NA meetings in the town. And we were able to build up to 1 every night and sometimes 2 a day. But our agency, our facility was able to have it, but all that went away. All that was shut down, locked down. And now we're down to, I think we have 2 meetings a week in this town. So a lot of the support that was there before went away overnight. It was almost instantly. And I can tell you the date exactly it was, Jimmy. It was March the 17th of 2020 when we had to shut the doors and stop everyone from treating their disease away. We had to figure out a new way to do that within these rooms. And everything that I know to be successful, to give me success in my life, was then it was closed off. The groups that I was involved in, all that was gone away in one day.
Yeah, that same in Southern Ohio, Chris. We also lost a lot of social services. We saw shelters close. We saw you could only get a hold of job and family services by phone. You saw doctor's offices closed. You couldn't even go to urgent care. I mean, it was there for a little while. It was legal services, parole, probation agencies shut down. We have a lot of legal referrals in our agency, and I came into treatment through a legal referral, so I can see the benefit in it. And there was just there was no checks and balances, there were no accountability, and I think it just set us on a really bad path that we're just now trying to get out of.
Right. Obviously, the pandemic, it has shifted the entire platform of treating substance use disorder, the recovery field, self-help groups, pretty much just turn our entire community up on its head. I know that you guys have mentioned issues with the legal system and other things, but what specific issues in your area have you noticed? I know specifically for ours, it's a lack of resources now. A lot of the companies that were helping us before in collaboration have actually had to shut their doors because of the COVID-19 virus. Can you all speak a little bit to that?
I can. That was some of the things, the resources that were there, funds that were available before that had now went away because of different policies and things that had to change around. I know we did see some help to try to get things like computers in here and screens to get these guys availability to get some of these meetings in, because we wasn't ready for that. We wasn't ready to go into a world where things had to come to a different platform. So those support, they shifted away, and we lost a lot of funds that we had prior to, because some of our income was coming from, we have DOC contracts. So that contract was coming from the jail systems and from the court's referral to us as an alternative to going to a sentence. Well, when that went away, and the immediate release, remember when we had that large, vast release of inmates, the population, that type of population was the type of population that was streamed to come to receive services like we have here in treatment options, and it was gone. So that was the biggest lick for us. That took away so much.
I have to say that I'm still focusing on the lack of connection. I mean, I've heard it been said that the opposite of addiction isn't abstinence, it's connection with others. So, and then everybody is isolated, and there is something different with telehealth, which is also a benefit in receiving services in rural areas. It opened the doors where it makes transportation not an issue, but in the same sense, it's not the same as being able to read somebody's body language when there's significant others next to them. You hear the kids in the background, and this is viewing the person in the environment. but it's kind of like a sacred hour with a therapist on what's really going on with me. That was a double-edged sword, I believe.
Some issues I've seen in my area, the health department usually plays a really great role in communities with Narcan distribution and things like that. They became so overwhelmed, and not to say we don't have great in our area, we don't have great health departments, but they're there, and those services were there. We've seen through them, health departments just being overrun with COVID protocols and trying to get vaccines out there. I think it's really taken away from the prevention services, the harm reduction services that we were seeing in rural areas, because a lot of times those play a vital part and work hand in hand with agencies, nonprofit and for-profit. They work hand in hand to for prevention, distribution of Narcan and needle exchanges, and those things those took a big hit.
Yeah, all of you bring up a really good point of lack of resources, and that's even something we've seen in our area. My county specifically doesn't have a homeless shelter. We have satellite institutions in the next county over that serves the homeless population here. COVID restrictions is something that we've dealt with. They're only allowed to operate at a certain percentage of capacity. They have to have negative COVID drug screen or negative COVID screens before they come in. They can't have any type of illegal or EPO warrants or anything like that. And that's really restricted the amount of people that we can actually connect with these services. And then on top of that, transportation issues is still something that we're dealing with. So we focused a lot on the negative aspects of how the COVID-19 pandemic has actually impacted the substance use field. Is there anything good that has come from the pandemic? Whether it be technology use or regulation changes or KRS changes, anything specifically that has impacted the way that you guys deliver treatment?
Well, I think some people disagree, but I think telehealth was a good thing. Some of the regulations have changed. Before you had to be licensed, you had to be in a licensed facility, and there were a lot of rules back and forth being able to perform telehealth as a therapist. Those for now, they have reduced and they may stay where they're at. And I think it opened up a lot of, case management services, peer support services, counselors, assistant services, being able for those people who play vital roles in recovery, in a person's recovery. And before, during the pandemic, they had no access to that. Now we still face the barriers, obviously, internet, technology, having access to that is an issue in itself. But I mean, for the most part, instead of no services, at least we have some services now.
And I agree with Jeremy. That was the idea. It's bad that we don't get to be in person for a lot of things. There's that intimacy about it that helps us grow and help one another. But telehealth was definitely one good thing for us as well. Now, we don't use a lot of telehealth here for billing, but I'm able to provide services for these guys over through phone calls. Now, what I'm saying is we learned to adjust our processes. I think we've implemented safer ways of processing individuals from the outside to into our population. I do believe that those are good. But we've also seen from us good things happen is local community places like churches and civic organizations and the doctor's offices here, the local doctor's office have stepped up, and they have created systems for us. They're coming into our facility. We're able to get our guys vaccinated and tested, and they've implemented testing for other diseases, and that's been a blessing. We never had prior to the pandemic, so that was a good thing. And I think just other people reaching out to provide and know that we're here and think about us during that time. That was a positive I saw from the community amongst everything else outside of the technology.
I'm gonna have to agree with telehealth opens the door to provide services for a lot of the population that wasn't receiving, I would say, the quality of services that you would receive in a bigger city, so to speak. But something that has happened in Eastern Kentucky is, Chris could speak to this, they now have an RV where they're reaching those rural areas and satellite locations. And the whole purpose behind that is for prevention. They do free HIV testing, hepatitis C testing. They do Narcan trainings. And they've gotten creative. And I believe that was through a grant as a result of COVID. Like, how are we helping these individuals? So, yeah. And it was interesting. I was a peer support specialist whenever they opened up telehealth for all credentials. It was odd to me. It was an odd shift, but with the right supervision, it was effective. Like, especially early on, I could tell that they couldn't wait to talk to us. A phone call, they just needed to unload, because we were going through the same thing that they were going through. Just that connection with somebody, it was really beneficial. Yeah.
Kyle, you bring up a really good point that, all of us have had to change and adapt to this situation. Statistics, however, show that, the overdose death in the state of Kentucky specifically has risen since the pandemic started. So you all as professionals, do you feel that more people are turning to the use of drugs now that the pandemic is here versus when the pandemic wasn't here? And what kind of rationality or reasoning do you think that actually is happening?
This is more personal experience. This isn't like backed up by data, but just through my support group alone. I've seen individuals in long-term recovery pass away due to a reoccurrence of use and during the pandemic. What can I blame that on? I don't know. They obviously had a condition that was in remission, and they used again. And ultimately, there's been a lot of funerals that I've had to attend this past year. So my personal experiences is greatly impacted not only people just trying to get into treatment services, but people who have been living in recovery, what we would call the maintenance stage of recovery. They've been there for a while, and then they go back to the relapse stage. And some people have made it, and some haven't. That's something I've seen through the whole course of my recovery journey, but not as much as I've seen the past 2 years.
And I agree with Kyle, going off exactly what it says, not numbers, my experience, my own personal emotions and dealing with I'm also a person that is committed to long-term recovery. I see how it's affected me. We've had to go on, and we've had to continue to help others and balance ourselves in that. Even in our school, most of us are in school and continuing our education and stuff. We've seen how we had to adjust and adapt to that arena, to going full-time in person and that type of situation, to online and the confusion we had there. I just thought the other day, we talking about people with long stints of sobriety or going back out. I think about the person now early on in recovery, coming into the room, being introduced to this for the first time ever. How much it's changed now, and that where we're at, to not have some of the things that we had, the resources we had back then. I ponder sometimes if it would be impossible for me to get through a lot of things without being introduced to the process the way I did. And I don't know, it's changed a lot, Jimmy. It's changed so much. And again, this is my personal experience. And again, personally going through and having to see these people face to face. I put more people in the ground in the last 2 years due to the disease of alcoholism and substance use disorder than I have COVID. I know that's real. And that's the intimate part of it. In the prior, we're looking at 12 years of me being in sobriety in this field, and this either in it, working in it, living in it, being in it. more in the last 2 years than the prior 10 years before. So I don't know where that data comes from or who's going to be able to collect that data for future college students and people and social workers down the road, but it'd be very interesting to know how much we've really lost and what's really changed here in the last 2 years.
Right.
Yeah. The stressors that people face in recovery anyway, right? Now we've got, people laid off, people losing family, friends, other people in recovery relapsing around you, the promotion of isolation, right? I mean, COVID has promoted isolation to stay away from other people. And that's really what people in long-term recovery have. They have each other. And it's, I think that along with increasing quality of drugs that are coming into this area from larger cities, that from police force and that are overworked and overtaxed because they've got everything else going on and they're dealing with COVID also. I mean, there's just so many reasons that that we can look at, and there is a little bit of data. I saw some data on 2020 and from 2020, and it was 56% more overdoses than the previous year in 2020. So those are the last solid full stats that I've seen. Same for West Virginia, and Ohio fared a little better for whatever reason, I think at 23%. So those are still just incredibly high numbers.
And I'd like to add one more thing to that. And it's something I just thought, we was talking about was it brought the technology. Now we're isolating people in their home and we're not allowing them to go out, but we're also, with our technology, we've got apps now on our phone that we can have alcohol delivered right to our door in 20 minutes, right? And with our connections here on our cell phones, we can have things brought to us. Everything switched to us could be brought right to us. So it's it's like a perfect storm right here in the last couple of years of things happening.
Right. Obviously, there are tremendous barriers to treatment in regards to the pandemic. Honestly, that's kind of why I wanted to have this discussion, just because already there's enough stigma that is brought upon substance use or alcohol use, mental health disorders, and especially specifically to the Appalachian region. Are there any specific stigmas that are in this area that have hindered an individual from being able to achieve recovery or to even ask for help?
First one that comes off on my top of my head is Matt. This area has seen, we've seen a lot of unscrupulous doctors that prescribe medication, pain medication that really just decimated this area with the opioid epidemic. It was ground zero. It's I don't know. Chris, did you have something? I lost it.
Well, no, I mean, I can agree with you on that because that's the only, being from, like I said, born and raised in Pike County. When I first decided that, when I first lost everything, the first time I lost everything, not the second or third time, but the first time I lost everything, I remember being the only options for me, and it was told all my life, either you're either going to get saved, the only options you got is Jesus or now this methadone clinic, right? And that was hard, understanding that I didn't know any other resource in the area at the time. So eventually MAT was something I was introduced to and eventually found out on. But other stigmas, I think when people think of certain types of recovery, we don't see a diverse population of individuals coming to seek treatment due to people thinking it's weakness. I could go down that, whether that's from the male species, men are weak, and I deal with men. So I got to put that out there. I'm in a residential male facility. And I see a lot of these guys talk about their issues, being able to speak about them openly. And back in our culture, you're talking about you keep stuff in the family. You don't spread the words of what's going on up and down the holler. Yeah, sure. Everybody knows your business. I knew, hey, I get in trouble over in my hometown and over in Elkhorn or whatever, out drinking with my friends, running around, get in trouble. And before I got home on Lick Creek, my mom and them already knew about it because everybody up and down the holler in the creek already called over and told her, right? So I believe that type of upbringing in rural Appalachia, and that we keep it in the family kind of idea, affects an individual when they're stepping into an agency, wherever it may be, to say, I can't do this no more, or I don't know how to do this, because we know that growing up in this area that we faced many different types of adversity, and we've overcame it. You know, our culture now sees a thing where our main source of livelihood for the last decade, for centuries, is gone and eliminated. The coal business is gone, and now we adapt. So we are always overcoming these things, but there's one thing I couldn't overcome, was getting intoxicated, using and getting high. And so that there reflects on my family and my image and the name you carry on. So I think that's a stigma. That's hard. That's still hard to swallow sometimes, you know, going back. But I know where I found the solution and the answer to that. And so I'm grateful that it did lead that way.
Do you care if I remember, Kyle? Don't let him tell you COVID brain is not real, because it is. It's a real thing. I mean, you just space out. I was talking about Matt. Then we have a bunch of you know, like Chris said, methadone clinics, Suboxone clinics that weren't ran correctly, that did not have programs behind them, that were you know, had some bad business practices, you know, did not incorporate any therapeutic value to the services, and I hope every one of those gets shut down. But I think we, as if we shut down Matt in this area, I think we're shutting down an avenue to recovery. It didn't work for me, didn't work for Chris. Kyle, probably, I don't know your story about it.
I tried.
You tried it. But I think, I've seen a lot of people recover through Matt, and we have another disconnect between 12-step fellowships and Matt. Obviously, there's a disconnect there. So, you know, we want these people, hopefully, to be able to have complete abstinence one day, right? To come off of Matt and be able to have the coping skills to deal with everything, and the support group, but they're not really accepted in the rooms of AA or NA. There's Mara and some other groups that are really trying to help people that are in MAT programs. But I think because of the stigma in this area, it's just, we're not there.
I want to piggyback off Wes, and it's something that I didn't have to do, but I felt like it was my job, because in treatment, when I worked in the outpatient setting, I had abstinence-based clients, I had clients on MAT, multiple different referral sources. And if I knew somebody was on MAT and they wanted to go to a 12-step fellowship, I'd have that intervention with them. Like, okay, there's probably, you're going to run into some stigma and some backlash if you walk into this meeting and you're open and honest about this. Leave that between you and a sponsor. And I would just prepare them for that, because it's something that you hear in the 12-step rooms. That conversation can go a lot of different ways, which is an outside issue and has no business in a 12-step meeting. I mean, not saying somebody on MAT, just the controversy behind MAT has no business in a 12-step meeting. Let me clarify that. But I mean, if I had a consumer on MAT and they're trying to increase their social supports, I've heard them say this for years: the people that mind don't matter, and the people that matter don't mind. I got a really good friend, and Jeremy and Chris know who I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to say his name, but he was 5 years abstinent, ended up using kratom excessively, and then he's currently on MAT, and he still has that strong support system. We call it recovery captive, to fall back on. We've done nothing but love this guy back to life. We don't see nothing bad happen to him, like our other friends the past 2 years. So Stigma in Ashland, the beautiful thing about Ashland is we are kind of a recovery ready community at this point. It's a cool thing to be in recovery through the years of advocacy that's taken place. There's Recovery Fest every year. The gentleman that put that on recently passed away. But as far as stigma goes in our community, I would say it takes place in the employer. Everybody doesn't get the second chance. Anybody in recovery can find a job working in recovery on some level, but that's not for everybody either. You know, I think some advocacy needs to take, and it has been taking place as far as employers go, but we still got a lot of work to do there. Yeah.
So you guys mentioned a lot of stigma, both inside and outside of the recovery community. And that's something that we see here as well. Whenever I had just gotten my bachelor's degree, I was promoted to a target case manager in our area. And one of my first tasks was to figure out what employer would or would not hire somebody in recovery, those who have been formerly incarcerated. And to be honest with you, I mean, I was shocked because it was actually about 50% of the total employers here in my hometown of Paintsville would actually hire a convicted felon. And to be honest with you, that was a higher number than what I expected. So in my personal experience, it seems as though the stigma is starting to ease just a little bit. But obviously, we still have a whole lot more advocacy and education to do. And that's kind of why we're here today to talk about that. We've talked a lot about the negative experiences because of the pandemic, how the opioid epidemic it seems to be growing because of isolation issues, barriers to treatment. So that leads me to my next question. And that is very simply, if you had a magic wand, what would you like to see changed in the Appalachian region regarding substance use treatment and the opioid use disorder?
If I had a magic wand, I would go back 20 years. And I don't think that's going to sound terrible if I say it, like a homicidal or something, but make sure the Sackler family never gets planned through with Oxycontin. I mean, magic wand, sky's the limit, right? I would not harm them. So that would be the perfect magic wand. Just wish all that away, but that's not reality.
Right.
For me, it's oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
It's all right. I'll tell you, I thought about this, and to believe that there was a simple solution for this, we know, all of us know from our experience, no. But what I would like to see change, and what I wish could happen is the biggest issue and barrier we run into is the disconnect between the legislation and the agencies and the people here on the streets getting to do the work. If there was a way that and we could have a meeting, and I'm sure there is probably somewhere a place where you have, and they do something like, and I know they did a little piece of it in Ashland where it was like evening with a cop or something like that, where we met with law enforcement agencies. Now, I don't know if there was, judges and prosecutors and county attorneys there, as each county may have, but we took in these men and these people like ourselves that have been on both sides of this thing and are out here trying to be the voice for these men and these people in our communities that we serve to bring more treatment and resources to our area. And we go get to sit down across from the cop. And I've got guys that sit down from the cop that arrested them for possessions, or the judge that sentenced them 15 times before treatment had failed and they didn't believe it's possible. But yeah, here's the guy standing in front of them with 10 years sobriety. That's what I would like to see, a place where that had to happen, where the counties, the county leaders and all through this eastern region. If it's divided up into regions, districts, whatever, would be at one place, and we would discuss what's going on. Because I've got the county prosecutor and some law enforcement here that still have this negative idea about what these men are walking in their community, because the community sees them. They know who they are in the community, and but understanding that they're children, their fathers, their brothers, their sons, but get that meeting into a city council or chamber. I would love to see that happen. That would be my magic wand scenario, to make that created, to have a space for that.
Yeah, mine's kind of similar to Chris. Being able for these agencies and legal, social service, treatment to all work together. A lot of times you see those disconnects between agencies and areas, and really I'd like to see more integrated care in this area. I think I love the integrated care model. I love it. We have some that you could construe in this tri-state area as integrated care, but true integrated care, you just really don't see it in rural areas. And I'm hoping that we'd have to make some leaps and bounds and really get some some change in these areas. It's going to be difficult, but that would be my magic wand. Everybody work together. Quit letting people fall through the cracks, right? If you can't help somebody, maybe somebody else can, and give them a chance. Give them a chance. The prosecutors, the judges. I've seen them come a long way. 20 years ago, lock them up and throw away the key. I was one of those. But now it's different. It really is.
All three of you bring up very valid points. We have came a long way, but we obviously still have a long way to go. Chris, you mentioned legislation and certain regulations. All three of you mentioned community efforts to get everybody on the same page to help reduce the stigma, to show individuals in our community that we're not the same people. I personally, I'm in that boat. That is my story to a T. I was an individual who joined the military when he was 17 years old, got sent off to Afghanistan into war. And because of what I had to do in war in order to survive, and I come home, I suffered from what we call religious trauma. And based off of the religious teachings of my childhood, that impacted my recovery and my addiction specifically, because I figured if I was already doomed to go down someplace that I didn't want to go, that I might as well just enjoy the ride down. And that's when my addiction truly spiraled out of control. And it wasn't until I met a Kentucky social worker that told me that if I chose to, I didn't have to use drugs again. And that to me was probably one of the most profound things that I'd ever heard, because I'd never heard it as a choice. And of course, we hear the debate constantly, day in and day out, is addiction a choice or a disease? My personal belief is that it's both. We start out as a choice, and then when the manifestation of an allergy is there, it becomes the disease. And then once we get into the recovery field, it does develop into a choice again, and we're able to get that power back. Again, that's just my personal belief. But one of the things that I try to focus on in my area specifically is reducing that stigma, showing the individuals that we do change. And like I said, my story is completely public. I've given my lead in front of social workers, addicts in recovery, drug court, panel discussions, colleges, all of that. And I think that advocating and educating is where we're actually going to make the biggest turn on this, because having events like recovery days, to where we have addicts and those that are in recovery, as well as the police and the fire departments and the EMTs, because we have to look at it from their aspect too. A lot of the police and the EMTs and the fire department, they see all the negative stuff. They don't see us as individuals. All four of us on this call today are addicts in recovery, with multiple years of experience in recovery. And we have devoted our lives to the betterment of the individuals that we serve. That's something that they need to see as well. Given that in mind, what kind of advice do you all have for the future social worker, specifically the social worker that's going to work in the substance use field in the Appalachian region, given the barriers and the trials and tribulations that we already have here?
I was speaking to a future social worker, somebody wanting to work with the substance use population. the best advice I could give is when they're given freely of themselves and trying to help these vulnerable populations, you cannot expect the outcome. Our job as social workers isn't to fix people, it's to enable them to stand on their own 2 feet, right? Linkage to resources, helping them through some deficiencies, but the outcome isn't our responsibility. And to take care of yourself, make self-care a priority, not just something I might do. Because burnout in this field, the potential's high for burnout. I think I'd imagine everybody here has experienced burnout multiple times this year alone. Had to step back from some things, right? That's it. Give your best, plant the seeds, and don't expect the outcome. Yeah.
I think with Kyle saying that, the best thing I can think of was looking at in this room here alone, at each individual in this room, and we knowing some of you very intimately, knowing your stories. We all have the same thing in common. We had to go through this process at a certain time. And today, what we're doing, networking, know your resources, know your opportunities. Again, in my own community, just blocks from where I'm sitting at today, they don't even understand what's going on in this facility. So know what your resources are, have this network of other people, because I believe the people that are on this call and the people that might hear this are going to be those voices of change. And we've seen that shift, that shift from the stigma, the paradigm shifting to this better society, cultural understanding of mental illness, and substance use disorder, racial issue. All this stuff is shifting because it's our generation. It's our time to shift, and it's having these resources, knowing who's out there, calling them. I was so glad when we got this opportunity to speak in this thing, man, because like these guys on here, and Jamie, I knew about you when I first started 2019, and Miss Spencer's class down there at Morehead State. Like, this is what we do. We're out there, we're advocating. And I didn't know your full story at the time, but I knew that having that opportunity was something that I wanted to be able to do for this area that I live in, my region. And these two guys that's on the call with me, I've seen them leave this very spot that I'm sitting at and go out and do that. And just here within a 100-mile radius, changing lives, giving other people the opportunity to change their lives. So going into this thing, man, just keep an open mind and know your resources, know the things going on in the community, and network out there because it's important.
That's Chris. I would say mine would probably be don't doubt yourself that you're making change. I think a lot of times, Kyle said burnout. I mean, it's very real. And sometimes we just think we're not making a difference, right? Why am I going to keep trying? Why do I even do this? You're making a difference in people's lives. You're making a difference in the communities. You're reducing stigma through your story and your interaction with community. We can affect change on so many levels as social workers, just to don't doubt, the power you have in that.
Right. My advice to the future social worker and the social workers that are already practicing in the substance use field in Appalachia would be to walk through the fear. Chris, you brought up, your teacher mentioning me in a 2019 class. I started out this whole journey with the Kentucky NASW as an internship in my bachelor's program. And a conversation that was being had in the library of the annex in Frankfurt is what led me to actually testify against House Bill 1 that year in the General Assembly. Specifically, that bill wanted to put stipulations on how people could or could not spend public funds, and they wanted to put a lifetime ban on drug felony convictions from accessing public assistance. For me specifically, at that time, I was a convicted felon. And what that translated to is, God forbid I ever lose my job, that equates to my children starving. I didn't agree with it. I thought that the lawmakers were not seeing the full picture or the unintended consequences of it. So I testified. I agreed to go in front of 20 lawmakers and tell them I thought what they were doing was wrong. And again, I've been to war, but I'm telling you right now, that moment in my life was probably the most scared I have been. But when we're able to walk through that fear and put our own personal ideas and bias to the side and speak on behalf of individuals that don't have a voice, that's what motivates me. Being able to speak on behalf of a population that doesn't get the opportunity to sit down with other individuals and speak about legislation or policies or things that can affect real change in this Commonwealth, in the nation, that's a driving force for me. You know, I tell people all the time, God gave me the gift of gab, and I've been running my mouth since I was born. It's just now I'm able to run my mouth for something useful. And I think that's what social work is all about for me, is finding out what your gift is, collaborating with other social workers and playing off of each other. Use the other person's strengths, you know, use them to fill the weaknesses that you have. And that networking is how we affect real change. We start at the community, the local level, and we work our way up. I'm very blessed to be in the situation I am. I know it's public information that, you know, I'm a drug addict in recovery. I spent about 14 years in addiction. Because of my addiction, I ended up being convicted of 2 felonies. And then this last December, I was actually given a gubernatorial pardon of my felony conviction. That's what I want for other addicts in recovery. I want to give them that second chance. I want to be the man that sits across the desk just like that Kentucky social worker did for me in my early stages of recovery. Obviously, we all have a passion, we all have a drive. And I think that's one of the important things for current social workers and future social workers to remember is never forget that fire that sparked why you want to be a social worker, because that's what's going to drive you through the burnout. It's going to drive you through all of the no answers you get. And it's honestly, it's going to be the motivating factor to continue doing what we do. So lastly, before we wrap up, I know that we talk about networking a lot in social work. So I would like to give each of you an opportunity to actually mention the companies that you work for, what resources you all provide, what type of treatment you provide, as well as how a person will be able to get in contact with you should somebody be seeing this video that's in addiction that is seeking recovery.
I'm the clinical director for Riverside Recovery Services in Southern Ohio. We provide 3 levels of care within substance use disorder treatment: partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, and non-intensive outpatient. We have 5 facilities, 5 residential facilities, supportive housing facilities, and an outpatient in the Chesapeake South Point area. We also have 5 facilities, 2 men's, 2 women's, and an outpatient in the Mount Vernon area, which is about 45 minutes northeast of Columbus. We work closely with a lot of mental health agencies in the area, and I think that is a real game changer. That when that was another lack of resources in this area. So when we cultivated those relationships and our clients are able to get, mental health assessment and medications the day they come in is huge. When before it was, 2 weeks, we'll see you in 2 weeks, we'll see you in 3 for an assessment. And so we've, Southern Ohio has come a long way.
Thank you, Jeremy. So my name again is Christopher Branham. I'm the current program director here at Genesis Recovery Kentucky Center. That's in Carter County. Under the Pathways umbrella, Pathways offers many sources here in this northeastern region. We have 10 counties serviced here. We have outpatient services in 7 counties. We've created one of the first local in this region Recovery Kentucky projects, which the Moorhead Inspiration Center was started in Rowan County. Now where my facility is here is another Recovery Kentucky initiative here in Carter County. These are 100-man bed facilities for residential substance use disorder and the treatment of that. So that is a beautiful thing. It saved my life. It changed my life. So I'm very proud to be part of that today. But Pathways in itself has grown and changed. We have a CCBHC that we've just rolled into. We're one of 4 agencies in the state that is incorporating a new way to provide services quicker and faster to its clients. Same day referral sources, the meeting, transportation availability, lesser time wait. So a lot of change has happened here in just the last year with the agency alone. You can find help with Pathways. We have an online website, pathways-ky.org. It has information about all of our services available there, outpatient. We also have a good thing here, that, and I want to mention this because I know it's a big issue, is that we have a maternity residential treatment facility for women that if they are going through their pregnancy or in the early beginning, like after their pregnancy, to need treatment help. It's hard to find a place to house those and provide that type of treatment. We have that at Pathways, and we have it right here in Carter County. So that's a great thing. We also do offer MAT programs and IOPs and DUI classes. So that's at pathways-ky.org. You can find all that information there. And we're also located throughout the state if you want to go on to Kentucky Help Now, findhelpnow.gov, which is a Kentucky-based website that the governor issues. Has got all these agencies on there. You can find us there as well. I think that's about the best plug I can give there, Jimmy. We're here.
Thanks, Chris. So I've had an opportunity to work at multiple different levels of care, engaging in the community to try to reduce barriers. I currently work with Jeremy. I work at a 2.1 level of care, which is intensive outpatient with a supportive housing component to help meet that need for the population in Southern Ohio. Housing is a big issue there, but I do a lot of advocacy within the community, link people. We have a lot of people that volunteer at the local community help center. They have a food bank. They help people in need, which is they love it. They love that. Got to advocate with the local adult probation office within Orange County, Ohio. They are not open to allow anybody on paper to work in the substance use field on any level, even if that's something that they self-determine. So there's some stigma there. But mainly, at my place of employment currently, I'm micro and medical, very little macro work where I'm employed. The phone number is 740-451-0342 for intake in Southern Ohio. Great man named Jeremy Brown will get anybody anywhere they need to go. There's a big difference between Southern Ohio and Kentucky just due to the resources. In Kentucky, there's a lot of core money, which provides a lot of services as far as harm reduction. QRT goes, stuff of that nature. There is QRT in Southern Ohio. I don't know. Jeremy signs my notes, so
You'll be signing notes soon enough, buddy.
yeah, I'm on my way. Yeah.
Be glad you're not now.
Yeah.
All right, and lastly, I work for a company called Kentucky Addiction Centers. We have facilities in Paintsville, Winchester, Paducah, and London. We provide outpatient services, both MAT and non-MAT, and we are getting ready to start an IOP program. You can contact us at callkac.com, or you can call us at 888-226-5824 in order to reach services. Again, I'd like to thank all three of you gentlemen for joining me today. I know it's a big ask to take time out of your Saturday away from your family, but I feel like each of you have a passion for this field, and each one of you are experts and leaders in the field, and that you believe, like I do, that getting the word out is probably the best thing that we can do. Do any of you have any final thoughts before we end the presentation?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity, Jimmy.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate each of you gentlemen coming here, and we will hopefully meet again soon.
I'm sure of it. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank y'all.